and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrup. And for our free speech viewers, we need to let you know that free speech is going to be having one of its pledge drives the next couple of weeks. So starting September 14th through the 27th, you will see us on those free speech outlets on Saturday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, or on Sunday morning at 7 a.m. or evening 7 p.m., 7/7/7 Eastern Times.
Our guest this week is the gay director Parvez Sharma, who is here to talk about his new documentary, A Sinner in Mecca, about his Muslim pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia. But before we get to him, we're going to give you a little bit of news at the top of the show, and here are the headlines, including obviously the saga of Kim Davis. She's the Kentucky clerk refusing to sign gay marriage licenses on her God's authority. But it continues.
And a Tennessee judge is denying a divorce to a non-gay couple because of gay marriage.
The Obama administration is proposing new rules that will make it illegal to deny insurance coverage to transgender health.
The people of Fayetteville, Arkansas, have voted once again to protect LGBT rights, sort of.
Activists in New York, LA, and San Francisco, many of them from the early days of the movement, demonstrated for the decriminalization of sex work, including some people you may know.
A candidate for president of Ghana wants all gay people shot to death.
A new study of PrEP shows that none of the 600 men who have sex with men who took Truvada got HIV.
Jonathan Rhys Myers takes on the role of an Irish revolutionary from 1916 who was gay.
But we do start with the Kim Davis story, which there'll be even more developments after we tape on Wednesday, I'm sure.
Well, she's not going to go back to work till Friday or Monday, so maybe we can actually have the news here hold for a couple of days.
This has been quite a spectacle, especially since there are other clerks and magistrates and things around the country who are also not, including in Kentucky, who are not giving out same-sex marriage licenses.
Well, this is a perfect storm because you have her refusing to give out licenses and you have couples who then sued.
Yes. And
she had a court order ordering her to do it and she refused. What she went to jail for, in spite of what Mike Huckabee says, is not for her religious conviction. She went to jail for contempt of court because she refused to follow a court order. And now she's out because the judge said,
as of the moment.
Yes, she could be back in by the time you see this. But she's out because the clerks in her office went ahead and issued marriage licenses.
Most of them except her son and successor.
Little Nathan is not issuing the licenses, but 5 others are. And so the judge said, all right, well, I wanted marriage licenses issued, and that was the goal of this whole thing. So you can get out, but you cannot interfere with the issuance of those licenses.
I don't want any shenanigans, he said. Now,
but she's playing coy.
Yes.
She's not, as we tape, we do not know whether she will try to throw herself in front of clerks issuing licenses or what.
It's a crazy thing, and a lot of it is because of Kentucky law, which says that the clerks are the only ones who can issue the licenses. Basically.
Well, that's not entirely true. And in fact, if she tries to interfere with the issuance of licenses, the judge, David Bunning, son of former famous baseball pitcher and right-wing senator Jim Bunning, has alternatives. He can designate others to hand out licenses.
Yes, and they have been.
No, I mean not just the clerks, the other state or local officials.
They deputize people.
Well, I think it's actually written into the law that others have the power to do so.
Well, I mean, this is such a crazy story that some people were even questioning whether the licenses issued by the deputies were valid. But the thing is, what is her issue? Her issue seems to be is, I don't want my name on the license. I don't think the gay people getting married want her name on their licenses either.
Well, the other thing is that this seems extremely strange. It's not like she is trying to stop the issuance of licenses altogether. She's not challenging same-sex marriage. She's just saying, I don't want to have my name associated with this icky thing.
And yet, if her name is off it, she still might have to be the person who files it.
She said she will, or her lawyer says she will. I'm not sure I believe that. But Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel keeps claiming, oh, she just wants a little accommodation of not having her name on it. She'll be happy to process the licenses, to file the licenses. How is that not soiling her hands?
They passed an accommodation law for anti-gay people in North Carolina, and it's in effect, and the ACLU is challenging it.
Because if you do that, you open up a Pandora's box, and you are excusing people from performing their government jobs in a way that hurts other people.
So you see the law and order crowd, like Mike Huckabee, a far-right religious nut, and Ted Cruz and people like that standing up for her, but are they really saying we don't want government officials to follow the law?
Well, that's the interesting question, and you know what I like to do? I like to accuse them of treason when they say things like that.
Lock them up.
Well, they are not recognizing the authority of the Supreme Court. They go on and on about how judges should not be able to make any decisions. And
Donald Trump says the court has spoken.
And so does Carly Fiorina.
And Lindsey Graham.
And Lindsey Graham. It's interesting the way the presidential candidates on the Republican side have been split over this.
Well, one of the deputy clerks, Brian Mason, said he will defy her if she comes back and starts up again and tells me I can't do this.
Brian's my hero of the week. He's the guy you see in the blue shirt handing out these licenses, and clearly with Kim in jail, he has discovered his freedom and power, and he's not going back to living under her thumb.
In the midst of all this, since we spoke to you last week, the county attorney there, Cecil Watkins, said she doesn't represent this county and its inclusive values. That this is Moorhead, Kentucky. It's a college town.
It is, and
that's one of the reasons this has come up there. I mean, there are other counties where, like this Casey Davis, who was not related to her, in Casey County.
He's related to the county, not to Kim Davis.
He's not issuing licenses to anybody, but then again, nobody's coming in for them either, he says.
Look, clearly there is a split of opinion. There is a significant minority that supports her and has this phony idea of what religious accommodation is.
Did we show her picture yet?
We should.
Put it up again, because, there
she's
she is.
She's rejoicing.
Exultant as she leaves. But she didn't have much to say.
Well, I'm sure
praise the Lord.
She's been told not to say anything because they don't want to get her in trouble with the judge, and they want to reserve her right. She doesn't want to answer questions about whether she's going to issue licenses.
Her husband, her fourth husband?
Yes.
Her fourth husband is giving out statements like, welcome to Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, good grief. But the Westboro Baptist Church,
with whom you agree.
They are the true believers. You know who they are. They picket funerals, right? And I'd be very disappointed if they don't come to mind. They said of Kim Davis, you cannot
they said if she had
sin, you actively live. You must leave the man who is not your husband, meaning the one she's with now, and go back to your first husband, or you're a sinner.
If you had any real fear of God, you would resign and move out of the house from the man you live with in adultery, which is your point from last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's what the Bible says anyway.
Well, and of course she's now being sued by the rock group Survivor for using their song "Eye of the Tiger" at her release ceremony.
Well, Jim Penterick said not only would we not give her rights to the song, we wouldn't grant her rights to use Charmin.
I didn't know they controlled the rights to use
Well,
Charmin.
you never know.
I thought that was a tacky comment.
Well, they were trying to make a point.
Well, the point is, as we explained at length last week, that you have a right to a religious accommodation for your own personal practices if you are not affecting those around you. If you, for religious reasons, want to wear a beard or wear a particular head covering, you are allowed to do so in many circumstances. But when it comes to not performing your job to the extent that you are blocking people from getting their legal marriage licenses, that does not fall under the heading of a religious accommodation. And all of this is being twisted by Huckabee and Cruz and Matt Staver and Tony Perkins and that whole crowd. This is all absolutely illegitimate. The judge, who is a conservative and is against same-sex marriage, has made that very clear, and they are just being willfully defiant for no good reason.
A woman named Rachel Held Evans did a tweet that said, "No one is being jailed for practicing her religion. Someone's being jailed for using the government to force others to practice her religion."
Exactly.
All right.
So if she tries to interfere, she could be sent back to jail, or the authority could just be taken away from her and given to someone else, which would be, useful, but again, not the real issue. The real issue is that a government clerk should be doing her job.
A lot of pressure on the governor to call a special session and make an accommodation law like they did in North Carolina. He says, "I'm not going to do that. It's too expensive." But they will meet in January, and I do worry about what they will do.
I'm actually proud of him for standing tall. He must be under an enormous amount of pressure. And in North Carolina, where they did pass that accommodation, 30 out of 670 magistrates have opted out of performing all marriages, as they have to do. They can't pick and choose. They have to get out of it altogether.
Let's stay on the theme of religion and homosexuality and bring our guest in, Parvez.
All right. Well, Parvez Sharma has made
all the way in. Well,
he's going to show us movies.
Welcome.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, come in further. We'll fix that as we show the trailer of your movie, A Sinner in Mecca. We actually showed it last week, but we're going to show it again to remind people and bring people up to date. You have made this award-winning, beautiful new movie, very compelling, about your pilgrimage to Mecca as an out gay man who wasn't so out, I suspect, on the journey. But we'll discuss that. But let's take a look at the trailer for A Sinner in Mecca.
Homosexuality.
It's against our religion. It's not acceptable at all to be a homosexual.
Parvez Sharma spent 5.5 years documenting the lives of gay and lesbian Muslims.
Right now, there's a battle for the soul of Islam. I was a marked man, a Muslim who was not only openly gay, but had also been publicly labeled an infidel.
Do you take Daniel to be your lawfully wedded husband?
Yes, I do. I expect to see the bloody sheet in the morning.
My mother never forgave me for being gay. I am now faced with a crisis of faith. I need to prove that I can be a good Muslim and be gay.
In 3 days, I leave for Saudi Arabia.
The beheading of an Indonesian maid in Saudi Arabia.
I'm going there to complete my Hajj pilgrimage, just like millions of Muslims before me have.
Saudi Arabia is one of the most repressive countries in the world.
The only difference with my Hajj is that I'm going there as an openly gay man, an act that is punishable by death.
I've been dreading this for a rather long time.
Let's go, hope we come out alive.
Brothers and sisters, it is not a minor moment, it is an extremely significant moment.
The Saudis off every area that might be too dangerous to film. For Muslims like me, Islam has been a faith of fear. Do I belong in this religion that condemns me?
No. Oh my God.
So it's no longer coming soon. It's here. It's in New York and Los Angeles, and it's available on
It's going to go on iTunes pretty soon in the next month.
Okay.
And it's also going on other platforms, including television.
So welcome. And one of the reasons that you say you're a marked man is because you made a Jihad for Love, which was also about being Muslim and gay. Among you covered a lot of people there in that film. Does Saudi Arabia keep some sort of a list of no, seriously? I mean, like when you come into the airport and things like that, is there how much danger did you feel in? Because this looks like a thriller.
I think we're surprised that you could travel at all, given that you had made the previous film, A Jihad for Love, and gained some notoriety because of that.
Well, I was surprised as well. I think I slipped in through the cracks, because around the time of the pilgrimage, they are issuing millions of visas, and I just managed to get in. I never thought they would let me in. Do they have lists? Absolutely. But I think at that time, you know, they just have to let a lot of people in, and I slipped in.
Well, let me take one step backwards. You made the previous film, A Jihad for Love, about gay Muslims being homosexual and being a person of faith in the Muslim religion. Tell us a little about the reaction to that film and what happened to your life as a result of that.
Well, A Jihad for Love is a very well-known film.
Yes.
And it continues, I think, to transform lives around the world. And not a week goes by when I still don't hear from people about having private screenings, for example, in Karachi in Pakistan or in Malaysia, and so on and so forth. So that film itself has impacted, I think, hundreds of thousands of lives. This new film, I hope, can do the same, but it's just come out, as you said, and I think it'll take a little bit of time.
When you talk about the effect that it has on people, though, I mean, gay people who see it, who are Muslim, Muslims who are more open now to gayness within Islam?
For me, the film A Sinner in Mecca is about coming out as a Muslim. A Jihad for Love was about coming out as a gay man, but I was done with that. And in this film, the battle is all about reclaiming Islam. Certainly as a gay person, certainly as someone whose sins are just a Google search away, but about saying that I, as a Muslim, have as much authority to belong in the religion as anybody else does. And that's what this new film does.
I think we hear that across denominations, people who don't want to cede authority to a religion that is hateful towards them and want to claim their own power to define the religion for themselves. But talk to us a little about the process of deciding to make the pilgrimage to assert yourself within the religious structure.
Well, the pilgrimage, as the film explains, was for very personal reasons. And had a lot to do with my mother. But at the same time, I was aware that when I went, it was just a few months after Osama bin Laden had been killed. And it was the year of the Arab Spring. And being the troublemaker I am, I wanted to go particularly in that year. It felt that it would be the most interesting time politically to be in Saudi Arabia making the pilgrimage.
But it was also a religious experience for you.
Absolutely, a very religious experience. The Hajj is your highest calling as a Muslim. It's a religious duty that you are fulfilling. And I went on what is a very religious, profoundly transformative, hopefully, journey.
So what did it feel like as a Muslim to go through it? And what did it feel to sort of have to, and you talk about this, having to recloset yourself in order to be there?
In Saudi Arabia, I could not come out. The modern day Hajj, when you go to Saudi Arabia, cannot be done on your own. You go with a group of people. So I was very afraid, for example, that they would find out, people within my group, who I was. As I said, it's just a Google search away. The experience of making the film itself was very interesting and challenging. Challenging because the film has primarily been made on an iPhone, and filming is forbidden in Saudi Arabia, but especially in Mecca, around the holy sites. At the time I was in Saudi Arabia, I was never sure that I would be able to even make a film. And certainly I wasn't sure if I would make it back out of the country. But thankfully I did. The footage that was not deleted by the religious police at the beginning of the pilgrimage made it into the film. And the final film, I hope, is a call to action to all Muslims about things that need to change within Islam.
Well, you do say there needs to be a reform movement. Where, I mean, there are reform movements in all religions. Where do you see the center of reform in Islam these days? And is it something you're a part of? I mean, obviously you are by making this film, but I mean, is it an actual sect or movement?
Not a sect, but I think it's interesting to look at Islam as it is today from a post-9/11 perspective. And post-9/11, I think the religion was forced into a reformation as a whole. And it's a massive religion. There are many different kinds of Muslims. Most of them do not agree with each other. So
clearly.
Yes. So a reformation was forced upon the religion by those terrible events. And Muslims were made to confront the consequences of the actions of a minority, in that case Al-Qaeda, who was speaking on behalf of Islam. And I think the voices of moderate Muslims like myself, but all around the world, needed to be heard, and needed to be heard loudly. And I think that it's an ongoing process, but I think when we look in the media today and when we look around us, it's a time of great turmoil. And a lot of the change that needs to happen within Islam really needs to happen in Saudi Arabia, which is the ground zero of Islam.
Well, we do, I think we're all aware of turmoil to some extent. We see factions being portrayed as fighting each other, however real the news coverage is. But we hear a lot, we hear about ISIS, we hear about Sharia law around the world being imposed, we hear about religious leaders taking control in some of those Arab Spring countries. Is that an accurate reflection? Is that a small part of the entire Muslim population? Give us some perspective from your point of view.
Well, it is the smallest minority, definitely. The argument that I'm trying to make in the film, and this is not just me trying to make this argument, it's a public argument, is that the ideology of ISIS, for example, comes from the ideology of the Wahhabi doctrine that Saudi Arabia practices, and that the most dangerous form of Islam today is the Islam that Saudi Arabia not only teaches to its children in schools, but exports with great success around the Muslim world because of their oil wealth, for example. And what this has done is that it has led to large populations of Muslims becoming increasingly conservative and often intolerant of minorities within Islam. And if we are able to diminish the power of Saudi Arabia, possibly, which I don't think is going to happen easily, but if we are able to do that, we will be able to see a lot of change within Islam. But as Muslims, we need to question Saudi authority over the religion.
And yet a movie like Wajda was able to make it out of Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely.
I don't know how you felt about it. I thought it was terrific, about a young a girl, you know, trying to blossom within that culture where women are not even allowed to drive.
Yes. I saw the film. I thought it was wonderful. Now King Salman has also, the new king, has made some noises about women being allowed to vote,
yes,
coming up in the near future. But we must realize that the problems within Saudi Arabia are deeper than that. We must remember that this is a country that routinely carries out beheadings in public almost on a weekly basis for all kinds of crimes. And and we are allowing that to happen in the 21st century. The government in this country, for example, is, in bed with the Saudis, and many in the West have not questioned that regime. So I hope that this film is one of many voices that come out and challenge Saudi authority.
Now, did your film lead to the development of support groups for LGBT Muslims?
A Jihad for Love?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Well, what are those groups? Can you tell people about them, how they can get in touch with them and be part of it?
Well, A Jihad for Love still has its website, which is ajihadforlove.org. There's an entire page of resources that people can go to. And as I said before, it continues to impact lives around the world. I feel, and I have always felt this, that film is perhaps the most powerful agent of social change. And in the case of that previous film, and hopefully with this one as it travels, we actually managed to live that change, and lives around the world were impacted and changed because gay Muslims watching the film, knowing about the very existence of that film, realized that they were not alone and that there were many others like them, and people's lives were saved.
I mean, most Christian and Jewish sects have not gotten to the point of totally embracing their gay people.
No, not the Catholic Church, for example.
Yeah.
Exactly, the Pope. We will be talking about him later. But do you envision a day when Islam will be inclusive of out gay people?
Not in my lifetime, no. I don't. Also, I say this because there is not just one kind of Islam. There are many kinds of Islam. In A Sinner in Mecca, of course, it deals with the Shia and the Sunni. So with there not being a centralized system of authority, at the Vatican, Roman Catholics, for example, have the Pope, it's not going to happen for 1 billion plus Muslims at the same time. However, there are voices calling out for change and for acceptance. We have to acknowledge those. But to say that in my lifetime I could see Islam as a whole saying that homosexuality is okay would not be true, because I don't think that's going to happen.
Pardon my ignorance, but was there ever a tradition in the history of the religion when there was a period of acceptance and
the history of Islam is rich, actually, with examples of homosexual behavior not just being tolerated, but being celebrated in poetry, in other forms of art. And I think that the biggest damage probably has happened in the 20th century, where a lot of conservative Islamic movements, as also the Wahhabi ideology in Saudi Arabia, have taken over the bully pulpit and have changed that discussion and have tried to obliterate this history of tolerance. We must remember that it's just a little over 100 years ago that societies in Europe were looking at Muslims as degenerate because they tolerated homosexuality and spoke about it openly. So this change has happened fast.
I can remember many years of hearing about men hand in hand on the streets in Arab capitals. And, all our discussion of Kim Davis is about conservative religious ideologies trying to wipe out any kind of progress or progressivism. I think we're at a time where people are concerned that are we at a tipping point of chaos in the Arab world versus getting through to a better place. We see all the war, we see refugees flooding out of the area. It's hard to know, not being there, how seriously to take all this, what to see it as the immediate and more distant future. Do you have any sense you can share with us of any of that?
Definitely. I think, and I say this in the film, that contemporary Islam is at war with itself, and I have fought hard not to be a casualty. And that's a very carefully thought out statement to make. Is Islam itself at a tipping point? Hard to say, but we do know for a fact, and we're living this on a daily basis, that groups like ISIS, for example, are speaking on behalf of Islam in the media all the time. As far as gay people are concerned, I have for a long time believed and maintained and said so publicly that some of our last and most bitter battles are going to be fought on the front lines of religion. And I think that those battles have not been won yet, not in this country either. I mean, what's happened at the Supreme Court is amazing, but what needs to happen at the church is a long battle that's not going to be won easily. So that remains to be done. That is unfinished business. And I think a lot of gay people need to step up and start talking about religion and homosexuality.
Well, A Sinner in Mecca is a great starting point for that conversation, or moving along the conversation at this point. It's an enormously compelling film. I'm really grateful you made it, because it gives such insight and it's so powerful. And we certainly wish you the best with it, and tell people to check out the Sinner in Mecca website for more information on how to see it.
Yep, and it's opening in theaters in Los Angeles on Friday, and then it's going on to Detroit and San Diego,
Detroit
and hopefully
will be
other
interesting.
cities as well. Yes.
And what's your next one?
I have no idea.
Well, thank you for joining us and talking to our viewers, and best of luck with all of it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Okay. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Back.
Okay.
Yes, we will keep talking about religion and homosexuality, I think, on this show. That's one reason this show will never die, is because there will always be something to talk about in that respect.
Well, certainly in the foreseeable future. And in fact, that cropped up in I want to say Detroit, but I may be wrong about that. At any rate, somewhere, an express jet flight attendant, a woman who converted to Islam after working for the airline for a few years, asked for a religious accommodation so that she would not have to serve alcohol to...
She had been doing it before, but not after she converted.
She converted.
Now, the accommodation was they got somebody else to serve the liquor.
Kim Davis converted, too.
Yeah, right.
But this was about finding someone else who would do it. She wasn't against that, and they did. But the fellow flight attendants did not like having to accommodate her.
I think they just didn't like Muslims.
Exactly. I don't think they liked her.
Because reasonable accommodations can be made. It's when people are blocked from service. I mean, or that just becomes an unreasonable burden on the other employees.
Exactly.
I mean, these are things that we're willing to balance, or we should all be willing to balance.
Well, the airline was, but now they've suspended her and revoked her permission to have that accommodation because her fellow flight attendants complained. So she's out at the moment.
Well, some other marriage news notes. Hey, there was a big mass marriage at Mount Rushmore. Did you ever think you'd live to see that? In South Dakota, 7 same-sex couples in a mass wedding organized by the women who had challenged the South Dakota ban. Nancy Ross and Braun and her wife Jenny, they renewed their vows, and the others got married at Mount Rushmore. And they said they did it because it's a big historic place, and this is a big historic occasion.
In Chattanooga, Tennessee, a judge has refused to grant a divorce to a straight couple because he says the Supreme Court has taken control of marriage. Ready for this?
Yes.
With an iron fist and a limp wrist.
Oh my, I didn't see that part of the quote. That's the key quote.
You bet.
Wasn't in my story I read.
Yeah. So he's just saying, the hell with it, I'm not going to do any of this.
I think it's time to get him off the bench.
Possibly, and they're investigating a judge in Oregon, Judge Vance Day, who has stopped performing marriages because his religious feelings are against gay people.
Violates his First Amendment rights, he says.
Well, you know, on the one hand, clerks are required to hand out marriage licenses. I don't think judges are required to perform weddings.
So he's you know, he is under investigation by the State Commission of Judicial Fitness because they've already, but they said if you don't want to do gay marriages, you can't do marriages, and I think he's okay with that.
But here's the
Any kind of
problem.
marriages.
Here's the problem. They are investigating him because they say if you won't do same-sex marriages because of your religious convictions, how are you treating gay people in court in other cases? So even though he is entitled not to perform weddings, they are looking into whether he is actually treating everybody fairly in his court.
I think we should look into that.
And we might want to look into the fact that in 2009 in Louisiana, Governor Bobby Jindal wanted a license revoked for a justice of the peace who refused to give a marriage license to an interracial couple. Would you revoke Kim Davis's license?
Right. Was he doing it for religious reasons? Because, you know,
yes,
I mean,
that is
Bob
what
Jones University lost its federal funding in 1971 or around then because they wouldn't allow interracial dating.
That is exactly the reason people give for being opposed to interracial dating or marriages. They say it's against the Bible.
Right.
All right, in other news.
Well, the big news this week is in transgender health. The Obama administration has issued rules, not in effect yet, under the ACH, the Obamacare, making it illegal to categorically deny anybody coverage for gender transition in private insurance plans as well as Medicaid and Medicare, children's health insurance, and the Indian Health Service.
Historically, medical practices have refused care to transgender patients on the grounds that we don't do that. But now, under the Affordable Care Act, they will not be allowed to make such a categorical rejection. They will have to treat all patients equally, including transgender patients, and provide the medical care necessary.
All right. The Ninth Circuit has suspended deportation of trans immigrants, citing dangers in Mexico. And this apparently sets a precedent. I don't know how Donald Trump feels about this.
Well, these are people who have been beaten and sexually abused by the authorities, by the police and military in Mexico, and are seeking asylum under the Convention Against Torture, which is a very specific, different kind of asylum, and the Ninth Circuit says they can proceed to claim that. In Norfolk, Virginia, a federal district court has denied a preliminary injunction to let transgender high school student Gavin Grimm use the men's room in his high school. The ACLU is appealing. This is an ongoing case about his status in the school and his access to facilities. But with the school year starting, they had applied for sort of instant access to the bathroom, and the judge said no.
Department of Justice is on his side. The ACLU says now he will be subjected to harmful and stigmatizing treatment in a segregated, you know, they're saying go use the trans room, essentially, because, you know, we don't know what to do with you.
But in Hillsborough, Missouri, a high school student, a transgender girl, Lila Perry, is getting a lot of support from students and others in Missouri. And the high school is supporting her. Parents and classmates are objecting to her access to facilities there.
That's good. And the good people of Fayetteville, Arkansas have some good news for us. They voted Tuesday on an anti-discrimination measure for LGBT folks, and they voted 53 to 47 to pass it. It's a test of the state law that says localities can't go beyond state law, which looks like it doesn't include gays, but may include gays because they included it in some hate crimes bill, didn't they?
Yeah, but it's not in sort of...
Anyway, they're ready to go to court of it. The opponents are ready to go to court. We're ready to go to court.
Well, there's a little fly in the ointment with this law.
It's a weak law.
Yeah, they passed a non-discrimination law last year, and then the voters repealed it. So they
led by the Duggar family.
Yes, the fabulous Duggars.
This was their campaign.
It was, and they put out robocalls from the Duggars and all of that. But they rewrote the law to write in a lot of religious exemptions.
Yes.
And now the law has passed. But it's so weak that the Human Rights Campaign said they could not support it.
Well, that's happened here, there, and everywhere. Sometimes it's very bad to codify these kinds of exemptions, and that's why we're fighting for a more inclusive federal bill.
In Arizona, the Sedona City Council has unanimously passed the Human Relations Ordinance, which includes no discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity.
And a whole bunch of other things. It looks like this is their big human rights law. It's not just an amendment, and it covers, older U.S. gay veterans who got undesirable discharges are applying for honorable ones. 100,000 veterans are affected. 500 have applied, and 80% have been approved since 2011. Groups want it streamlined. Congress has an act to do this, but we needed to move.
This was a big piece in the New York Times this week. It was good. We celebrate the life and mourn the death of Dr. Martha Kirkpatrick, 89 years old. She did the first studies of kids raised by lesbian parents versus heterosexual parents. She found that, of course, 2 parents are better than 1. That's what we have always said and acknowledged.
Sometimes.
Well, the right wing, yes, it depends. But the right wing has always used that to say heterosexual parents are better. No. 2 parents are better. That's the actual finding.
We respect single parents.
And she also found that, and this was in 1979, she was doing this study, that lesbian mothers gave the kids more exposure to men than straight mothers. Wow. Which proves my theory that straight women hate men much more than lesbians do. Just a semi-facetious generalization.
We don't want a lot of letters about this.
No. In Doylestown, Pennsylvania, a judge rejected the attempt of straight parents to stop surgery for their transgender daughter, 48 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this case is not directly gay-related, but it is a little appalling. In North Carolina, a young man named Cormega Copening, 17, faces 10 years in prison for possession of explicit photos of a minor. Himself! It's a picture of him that he apparently sent to his 16-year-old girlfriend. If convicted, he goes on a sex offender registry. It is...
Even the New York Times is now editorializing against these sex offender registries covering everybody.
Covering everybody. I mean, you could have done some adult thing. I mean, people who committed sodomy were sometimes put on these lists years ago. So we got to be more careful. Of course, we want to protect children. But ultimately, what the Times is saying is you're not going to protect children because you're isolating these people, you're making them homeless, and they're just out there roaming around. And
you paint much too broad a brush with this. Speaking of which, we did attend a demonstration last week in Brooklyn at the United States Eastern District Courthouse.
I have a picture.
In support of sex workers and the decriminalization of sex work. There's me and Steve Ashkenazi, our old colleague from Hetrick Martin.
Yeah, we all used to work together at the Hetrick Martin Institute for LGBT Youth, and Randy Wicker was there, and Jim Farrat was there, and other veterans, people from way back.
Half the movement was there.
Yeah. These are the people who don't just click on something on Facebook or something to make a statement. They get out.
We're old school. We get out in the streets and demonstrate. And you yelling at the guards with the big machine guns.
Yeah, my God, the Homeland Security was there at this demonstration. I mean, folks, this is your tax dollars at work. A bunch of older people marching around with some signs, and you've got guys with machine guns there. They were guys.
There were a good 100 people out there at the demonstration, which was great. This is in support of those arrested who run rentboy.com. We think that prosecution is just heinous and
we're
ridiculous.
we're very concerned about everybody being arrested for consensual sex work.
Yes.
And it's an outrage.
Yeah.
And of course, again, we're against trafficking. We're against those kinds of things, and we have worked against it.
Yeah.
It's horrible exploitation, but don't say that everybody involved in sex work is being exploited.
No. All right, a couple of little coming out stories. In Louisville, Kentucky, football, of course, is very big, and the football coach at the University of Louisville is Bobby Petrino, and his son, Bobby Jr., has come out in an interview in a local magazine.
Publicly.
Yeah.
Well, he was worried about telling his father. His father said, "Oh, I already read the article. It's great. I love you."
And also in the sports world, Israel Gutierrez of ESPN, who does the Around the Horn show.
Yeah, he's on television, and he does a blog.
And he's getting married to his partner on September 12th. I think we have a picture of Israel. And so he's been out, to family and friends for a few years, as is Bobby Petrino Jr. But they're searching for it. But Israel's getting married, so he said, there he is. People will ask me about the wedding ring, so I thought I might as well come out. So
but he said, as a kid, he used to blow out his candles on the birthday cake with, "Please don't let me be gay." He thinks he can now be a better professional.
I think we all had those moments, even you.
I wouldn't waste a birthday wish on that.
Well, not literally a birthday wish.
I don't know. I mean, you're asking me that.
There was never a time in your life.
I was obviously closeted. I obviously thought, but I don't remember praying to the false god that I worship. No. I'm just saying, please take this away from me. I don't remember that part of it.
Well,
not like I was totally self-accepting. I wasn't totally self-accepting of it.
Well, that's
obviously,
all
I was closeted.
That's all I'm saying.
But a wish, anyway.
Maybe not so explicit. International news?
Yeah.
Tell us the Ghana story. That's so charming.
I mean, they're having an election coming up there, so
everybody hates us.
Well, in Ghana, the presidential challenger, George Boateng, they have a 3-year penalty for sodomy there already. He would...
I bet for gay people only.
He would kill all gay people by firing squad because he wants to eradicate homosexuality. And he
Good
thinks
luck with that.
Public executions will be a deterrent. Oh, man.
I have a lot of people blowing out their birthday candles.
Because that's some people hear that and they say, good idea.
Well, in the Maldives, which is an island group in the middle of the Indian Ocean, 2 men have been arrested for homosexuality, and they're trying to do Sharia law for everybody there.
On the other hand, in Spain, and we have a picture of this, 2 gay police officers were married to each other.
And they're cute.
At first, in Jerez de la Frontera, believed to be a world first. They hope that they will serve as role models and reduce bullying. They're honeymooning up and down the west coast of the United States.
But also in Spain, as you referred to in our earlier interview, I think, or no, off camera, a bishop has reversed his reversal of an earlier decision. A transgender man cannot be the godfather to his nephew. The Vatican says it is impossible because he is not living the faith.
What are these people like? What are they, dogs? They are alien to the faith? I mean, where's the humanity?
This is the nonsense of the faith. This is, it's all such a phony construct. This whole thing about the annulments this week, we're going to make annulments easier. Well, what does the church have anything to do with annulments in the first place? You could have 6 kids and be married for 20 years and get an annulment that says your marriage was not legitimate.
It never existed.
Yeah.
There never was a marriage. People used to get annulments almost automatically because one of the partners was gay. But it's an outrage. And, we're going to be sickened because it's going to be Pope 24 hours a day in a couple of weeks here in America. And folks, this is a patriarchal religion that, is invested in men being in power, God being a man. I mean, all the
controlling everyone's lives for the profit of the church.
So don't fall for the Santa Claus stuff.
Are we being a little harsh?
Well, no. I mean, it is very dispiriting to me to see how immature people, I'm going to say it, get when they look on with awe this man who was representing this faith, who was elected by a bunch of other, old guys.
People are looking for a patriarchal figure to promise them eternal life so they don't have to face the horror of their lives here.
And I would say patriarchy is the root of all evil. In Uganda, a sports club president there, Chris Mubiru, was convicted of sodomy 3 years after a picture of him having sex with a man was plastered on the front page of the Daily Monitor there. A second charge was dismissed because the party apparently consented. I didn't know they had any kind of consent thing. He's being sentenced on September 18th, Uganda.
Remember a few years ago when the Cayman Islands was in the news for being anti-gay, and there were things about cruise ships going there or Sandals Resort in the Cayman Islands? Well, now a gay couple has stepped forward to challenge the anti-gay laws in the Cayman Islands. They are married. They
elsewhere.
Yes, in the UK and Argentina. They live in the Cayman Islands, and one is threatened with deportation because the Cayman Islands will not recognize their marriage. So they are now stepping up with a lawsuit, and they're going directly after these laws in a very anti-gay territory. So thank you for that.
Australia. The plebiscite on same-sex marriage that is being proposed by the Conservative government there could cost $160 million. Now, I didn't realize this. Tony Abbott, who's the Prime Minister, he's pledging to abide by the results of the plebiscite. So if the people say we should do it, we can do it. But 2/3 of the people in polls already say so. They can save a lot of money.
What, by just going by the polls?
Well, 2/3 is pretty big, and at least it's a good reason to vote on it instead of holding a plebiscite. I mean, just have a vote on it.
What's the difference between a plebiscite and a referendum?
Referendum would be binding and actually would change the law. A plebiscite is advisory.
Okay.
The former labor leader...
Oh, nice of him to agree to that, right?
And nice of the former labor leader, Julia Gillard, or whatever her name is, who was in power and wouldn't bring same-sex marriage to a vote in the more progressive government there. She's come out for it now. She's for it now. The Netherlands has declared Russian LGBT people seeking asylum as a risk group, citing Russian anti-gay laws fueled by anti-gay sentiments in the population. Up until now, Holland classified Moscow and St. Petersburg as safe places for gays. In fact, they would tell people from other parts of Russia, go to Moscow or St. Petersburg.
I think it depends on the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But one of the unfriendly places is in the Ukraine, where anti-gay attackers threw fireworks into an LGBT community center, beat attendees at a meeting there, smashed the furniture. It was just a very aggressive attack.
It's not just the Ukraine. Reported anti-gay crime is up 30% in London. Police say that Westminster, which includes Soho, is the worst in terms of number of incidents. But there was a 217% increase in the neighborhood of Bromley. All right.
Let's move on to AIDS news, where there is some actually very good news. Up for debate for the last year or two has been the use of a particular drug, Truvada, as preventive medicine against getting HIV.
Pre-exposure prophylaxis, what you hear referenced as PrEP.
The idea was that you would take this drug on a daily basis and you could then prevent infection with HIV. So there have been various studies going on about this. There have been talk about, well, is it 99% effective or 91% effective?
Try 100.
That is the result from the latest study by the Kaiser Permanente group in San Francisco.
After 2.5 years, 2.5 years, 600 men who have sex with men.
657, actually.
All right.
They followed. No new HIV cases.
Now,
Zero.
They do say many are using condoms less, and half of them have gotten other sexually transmitted infections, but it does not increase, they say, sexual risk-taking.
Well, I think using fewer condoms could be defined that way, but if you are taking Truvada on a daily basis, and of course we also know that it has been used as post-exposure prophylaxis, that if you have unprotected sex and you take it afterwards for a few days, that can also work.
If you have a suspect liaison with sex with someone, condom break, something like that, you should get on with someone you don't know, and you don't know what the status might be.
Or do know, but don't know their HIV status for sure.
Right. You can take the drugs within 24 to 48 hours, and you are highly unlikely to become infected.
So this raises the same old questions. Are people who are sexually active willing to take a pill every day to prevent HIV infection? There are a lot of people who don't want to do that. Yes. And then we point them to women who've been taking contraceptive pills every day for most of their lives. But it seems to be effective, and that is an important factor to consider if you are sexually active in ways that could risk HIV infection.
And we've been telling you that a hepatitis C cure is available now. It's very expensive, $84,000 for a course of treatment. It's being denied to prisoners, to 10,000 prisoners who need it in Pennsylvania alone, including Mumia Abu Jamal. So they're urging you to call the Secretary of Corrections there and get it online.
All right, entertainment news. I am interested to see that Kathleen Turner is appearing off-Broadway in a new production called Would You Still Love Me If, as the mother of a transgender lesbian. She's the mother of one of the women in a lesbian couple who is going to transition. And previews start September 26th, opens October 10th.
Is this on Broadway or off-Broadway?
Off-Broadway.
Okay.
Would You Still Love Me If?
And we love Kathleen Turner.
Yeah.
Coming up on the 100th anniversary of the Easter Rising in Ireland, they're making a movie about it, and Jonathan Rhys Myers, we have a picture there, is set to play Pádraig Pearse, who is obviously on the left, the gay poet and revolutionary who was executed for his role in the uprising. Now this raises the whole issue of, again, now of course Jonathan Rhys Myers was raised by gay men, but the whole issue of gay people getting these roles, trans people getting trans roles, was a big article in the Times about that. It is a huge controversy.
I see that GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, has dropped its network responsibility index after 9 years, and now calling Fox excellent for Empire and Glee. Empire starts again soon. I can't wait. But they're still going to be issuing annual reports. What's the deal?
I don't know.
Well, we have Rob Shuter, entertainment reporter, host of the Gossip Table, with us next week. Maybe he can straighten out some of this. And there's also a movie opening, Breathe, in New York this weekend and LA next week, that's about two young women who are sort of involved. It's no blue is the warmest color, but it's a little interesting.
And as the credits are rolling, we will remind our free speech viewers once again that starting September 14th through the 27th, Free Speech is putting you on a limited schedule of Saturdays at 7 a.m. and Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.
Eastern time.
Eastern time.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
But we'll see you next week with Rob Shuter.